everyone. Just waiting a few minutes until everyone's in from the waiting room. Okay, perfect. I think everyone should be in about 30 seconds. Right. Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to Scientist Chats. This is week 11. I think this is our final chat for this time period. So I want to thank everyone for joining us for this one in particular. And thank you for everyone who's been here throughout the entire 11 weeks now. So, as usual, attendees under the age of 13 are advised to have a parent or guardian with them, as well as just to let everyone know that this session is being recorded. This week's topic is food engineering. And to speak to us today about food engineering, we have Folake Oyewale, who is a PhD candidate in the Diversified Food Engineering Group. She attends the University of Toronto, as well as she's a former soapbox science speaker. Her interests include food fortification, encapsulation techniques, and value-added processing. So please join me in welcoming Folake.
Hi, guys. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. I'm very honored to be here today, and I hope you guys learn a thing or two. So let's get started. Okay, just a minute. Okay, there we are. So I thought I should, tell you a little bit more about myself and share one or two things about myself so that you know how I got to where I am today in terms of my research interests. So I grew up in Nigeria. I'm the second of two daughters, second child, and I grew up in a very academic environment. So my dad, a research scientist, and my mom is an educationist. So I grew up knowing the importance of education. But how did I get into engineering? I think that's the first question. And I'm going to try to take you down that journey. So as a little child, my dad was running a fellowship in the US, and myself and my sister, my mom, we went over to visit him. And it was just a great change. Like things were working, not like back home where we'll turn on the tap sometimes and it wouldn't run. There was constant electricity. Everything seemed to be working just fine. So I wanted that in my country. And I wanted to see how I could make that happen, even at that impressionable age. So as that young girl of 8 years old, I was like, okay, so how can we make this happen? And then with asking questions, like I said, it was an academic environment. There were a lot of people I could look up to, mentors I asked, and engineering seemed to be what I could do to fix things, quote unquote. So yeah, I just went into high school knowing I wanted to be an engineer, specifically a chemical engineer, because I had one of my mom's protege pitch chemical engineering to me, and I thought, wow, with chemical engineering, you can solve the problems of the world. So yeah, I went into my undergrad at Obafemi Awolowo University, which is one of the known universities in Nigeria, the better known ones, and I had my BS in chemical engineering. And while I was there, usually we have like industrial trainings, that's like internships. And I was coincidentally posted to two food and beverage industries. So that's what led me into food, And I was excited. However, I felt the jobs the chemical engineers were doing, the production engineers, they were pretty monotonous. And I didn't know if that was what I wanted for myself. Did I just want to go and, look at processes, manage unit operations? I felt there wasn't really anything new, innovative, or exciting about what they were doing. That being said, I went ahead to the UCL to get my master's. And that was where my love for research started. The research I did had nothing to do with food engineering. It was about CO2 sequestration. But I started research And I appreciated that that was the way I could, make a change. And one of the things I thought about was, back home, everything was still being imported, even to manufacture stuff. And I thought we have so many resources. Why can't we use what we have to make a change? So when I got back home, I went back to Nigeria. I joined the foremost research institute, that's Federal Institute of Industrial Research in Lagos, Nigeria, and I started working there. And most of what we were doing was value addition, value added processing, and natural products development. So we were using indigenous raw materials and seeing how we could substitute those out. Yeah, so it was frustrating. It was frustrating being there doing research without so much like the government wasn't pumping resources into the research institutes. And I was almost gonna, just bow out and do something else. But a string of fortunate events, including bagging a scholarship, the Schlumberger Foundation Faculty for the Future Foundation scholarship, and also getting my supervisor to agree to supervise my project, got me here. And so I started my PhD, and I did bring with me materials from Nigeria because, like I said, I'm very interested in value added processing. Plus, the research is one that is very impactful. And as we go along, you see what I mean. So now, I wanted to touch briefly on who a food engineer is and what food engineering is. So it's a multidisciplinary field, and it has to do with a lot of other sciences, like we combine microbiology, applied physical sciences, chemistry, and engineering to solve issues for the food and industry and other related industries. And I would like to highlight the difference between a food engineer and a food technology. With food engineering, we're concentrated on the unit operations, basically, of food manufacturing, design, and development of processes and machines for mass manufacturing, which is, where we come in as engineers. But the technology sort of encompasses more, outside of what a food engineer would do. So I just wanted to clarify that for you. So let's go to the topic for today. So I've coined it Hidden Hunger, Fortification to the Rescue. And as a go, you know what I mean. So what is hidden hunger? It's a global challenge. I think that's the first thing we need to know. It affects all of us as a world. And it's another name for it is micronutrient deficiencies. And it's basically a lack of essential vitamins and minerals, which are needed for the proper growth and development of our bodies. And like the name says, micronutrients, we need them in very minute quantities, but they're essential for your growth. And as I will explain more. So who is most at risk? I will say a lot of important people. And the World Health Organization does say that approximately 2 billion people are affected by this menace. And it's sometimes combined. So you may be iron deficient and have a zinc deficiency or folate deficiency, and sometimes you just don't find one single deficiency even in one human being. So children under 5, women of childbearing age, people in conflict zones, and internally displaced people, they're quite prone to this, and low to middle income countries, as this graph shows. So it shows you, this is the Global Hidden Hunger Index in preschool children. I believe this was around 2016, I'm not too sure. Anyway, so this shows countries that are most affected. Let me see if I can get my pointer going. Oh, sorry. So, yeah, so here, that didn't work, okay. Just give me a minute. Okay, anyway, yeah, good. Okay, so here, that's Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. They have alarmingly high rates. The prevalence is really high in those regions. And, it begs a lot of questions to productivity, to the economy of the regions. And what we found is that it's a vicious cycle. The consequences are very great for countries and communities that have a high prevalence of this micronutrient deficiencies. And I should mention that when we talk about micronutrient deficiencies, I've said minerals, I've said vitamins, minerals like iron, like zinc, and then with vitamins you have B1, vitamins B1, B12. You know, if you want to, you can read up a little bit more about the effect of this deficiencies. So here is just showing the cycle. So with micronutrient deficiencies, you have hungry mothers giving birth to underweight children who have impaired cognitive and physical development and are quite susceptible to infectious diseases. So you have a population with poor health. And then, of course, with poor health, there's low productivity. There's a higher mortality rate for both mother and child, decreased performance of children in school that leads to poverty. And with poverty, limited capacity again to develop the health and the education sector. The education sector, because it plays a huge role in this whole cycle, because if people are not educated, even when you go over and have like try to implement solutions, they're not prone to take up those solutions because a lack of understanding of what the benefits of those solutions are will stop them from accepting what you're doing, especially if it looks different from what their norm is. And also diminished economic development. So it's a vicious cycle, like I have said before. So then I thought I should touch on the relevance of hidden hunger and with COVID-19, the pandemic, because it's what our world is experiencing right now. So we know that, I'm sure you've heard this, that people are saying that people with hidden hunger, macronutrient deficiencies, people lacking vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C, have weak immune system, and this makes them susceptible to COVID-19. Also, people with underlying health issues, and like I said in the previous slide, with hidden hunger, you're prone to have infectious diseases, and this will lead to, you know, underlying health issues. And in the same, conversely, food distribution systems are disrupted because of COVID-19. So it's also sort of increasing people's chances of having hidden hunger because they decrease access to nutritious food. That's on the short run. On the long run, the second development goal, that's end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture, is impacted because these goals, there are targets that have been set for them, but this has set those goals and those targets back a long way. So how do we combat this micronutrient deficiencies that we've been talking about? So there are some approaches that have been identified, like diet diversification, which means, you know, you have you're eating different things. Like the nutritionist will say to you, have a colorful plate. You want to make sure you have a balanced diet. In this part of the world, that's an easy thing to achieve. However, for, you know, low to middle income communities and countries, it's a challenge because there's the challenge of affordability, accessibility, and things like that. So that approach might not necessarily be successful for them. And also supplementation. Likewise, there's a problem of affordability and accessibility for those communities. And even with us that we do have those access, you don't want to be popping pills every day, like, you know, and on vitamins. Even children, like with children, it's a struggle. And that's why you find cereals are fortified, because they know that it's difficult to get children to take all the supplements, vitamins daily. So they put it in the cereals that they know that they're going to take. But in developing countries, especially in the rural areas, they don't have access to this fortified things. So, sorry. So the last one I was going to talk about was food fortification, which is actually the one that has been said to be the most cost-effective approach to solving micronutrient deficiencies for large populations, particularly the populations that we focus our research on. And food fortification is the process of adding these micronutrients, like I said, minerals and vitamins to food. And what we have found effective also is staple foods. When you fortify foods that people take regularly on daily basis, especially that you can monitor the dosage, it's easier to eradicate micronutrient deficiencies. So I just wanted to highlight one of the more common, something that all of us can relate to, iodized salt. This is what we most of us use in our homes. And this has helped to solve the problem of goiter all around the world. And that's just an example. So some of the fortification approaches have been modeled around how this was a successful approach. And so you, like in my lab, you find that we are working on salt. We've been able to do multiple fortification of salt. And we're looking at multiple fortification because, like I said, we found that these deficiencies work like they happen concurrently. You find one deficiency, you find another deficiency. It's not just isolated to one. So to be more cost effective, it's always it's now being promoted to have like multiple fortification of whatever the food vehicle is. So for every region, it's important to identify the food vehicle. That's one of the key things. And also for it to be something already commercially available. Their distribution lines. It's easier that way to make it more cost effective and acceptable, because this is what they've been taking in the region. It's food that they're familiar with. My research is actually on hibiscus and the beverage, and it's indigenous to Nigeria. Like I said, I brought it from home, and it's my target region is sub-Saharan Africa, and I'm looking at adding iron. The hibiscus beverage is reported to already contain iron. However, it has polyphenols and phytates that actually impede the absorption of iron. So I'm looking at how to overcome that and also look for a way to fortify the beverage in such a way that we can close the gap in other food fortification initiatives within the region. So what are the challenges, especially the technical ones, which is what we as the food engineers in my lab are addressing? So we have stability of the micronutrients. This, especially the vitamins, are very unstable. If you see what happens with your vegetables or your fruits and you leave them out for some time, you see that there's degradation. And so even in putting them in food, we have to think of their shelf life. We have to make sure that we put them in such a way that when the consumer gets to them, they still contain those micronutrients in the form that the body needs. Also, chemical interactions between the food and the fortificants being the micronutrients we add. And because they're all chemicals, right? Food is a chemical, and these fortificants are chemicals. So there might be interaction between them. Also between, like we're talking about multiple fortification, right? So even between two fortificants that we're looking to put into a particular food vehicle, there might be interactions. So those are the kind of things that we have to address. Then bioavailability, it's a big thing, because even if you put it in and when the person gets it, is not able to absorb it in their bloodstream, if the goal is defeated, as well as maintaining the organoleptic properties of this food. This is big, especially for the rural regions, because they don't want to take salt that is looking green or red because you added something into it, or tasting different. They want their salt to be salt. They won't purchase it if it's not salt. So these are the things. White salt, it has to be white. With flour, it has to taste like flour. Everything has to be, the food has to still maintain its organoleptic integrity, its mouthfeel, its look, its taste, like I said before. Yeah. So I just wanted to show you an example of iron salts. This is a color of some of the iron salts we use for fortification. Fancy just having specks of red and green in your salt. You're not going to buy the salt. You're just going to put it away. We might even buy it. We might find it interesting, but think of people in the rural regions, people that are set in their ways. They're just going to think there's something wrong with, what we're selling to them in those regions. Yeah. So this is how we came to microencapsulation technology. And we have found that microencapsulation technology can help to sort of mask some of those, address some of those technical challenges, like taste, for instance. So it's going to mask the taste, it's going to mask the color. And to explain what microencapsulation is, it's a process which tiny particles or droplets are surrounded by a coating to give small capsules. And if we think of something like salt, we want to make sure that, the grains, we call them premixes of our fortificants are actually at the size of salt or smaller, so that it's when the eye looks at the salt, it still looks like salt. Or even if it's rice, you want it to mimic the size of rice, the shape of rice. Or you know, you want to drink, you don't want to drink with aftertaste. So this is where microencapsulation comes in. It's sort of coats your, and I'm going to show you, you can watch this video while I'm explaining what it does. Sort of it coats your bioactive, which will be inside, and it sort of coats it and protects it from even the food. So we prevent the chemical interactions that I was talking about. It helps with delivery. It gets to where it's supposed to go through to without any interactions, even in the digestive system. And it makes it, the organoleptic properties are kept intact, basically. So that's one of the benefits of the technology. And this is what we do a lot of in our lab, trying to develop the right microencapsulation technology. And I just thought that, sorry, using the Kinder egg might explain it better, you know, the Kinder Surprise. So you have your wrapped Kinder Surprise, the chocolate, and in there is the surprise, right? In a little plastic container. And so that plastic is protecting the toy inside, and there's no interaction between the toy and the chocolate. You don't want to get your toy and have streaks of chocolate on it. And in the same vein, you know, even for your own sanity, you don't want to think that that plastic or that toy or that whatever the speck of from the toy is getting into your chocolate. You can chew your chocolate with confidence. So this is actually what it is. So that's what I thought I could explain, how I could explain microencapsulation to you much more easily. And there, you know, here's some microencapsulation techniques. I just thought for those of you that might be interested in knowing, you know, what techniques we use. There's spray drying. And most of these techniques are actually drying technologies. They're adopted for the purpose of microencapsulation. Spray drying, the fluidized bed, spray chilling, an extrusion method. And yeah, so that's basically what we do. So I just wanted to reiterate things I want you to know. I focused a lot on the problem because this problem is something that can affect you or I. You know, when I go out and I'm, you know, giving my presentations, I find people telling me, oh yeah, I'm iron deficient or this. So, you know, here there's a lot of vitamin D deficiency also. So even though we're targeting the developed, you know, low to middle income communities, it's actually still resident with us too. And so I wanted you to know that it doesn't mean you lack food. It means you lack minerals and vitamins that are vital for your proper growth and development. And it's a global challenge, like I said. And fortifying staple foods, particularly for this our target population, has been found to be efficient in combating micronutrient deficiencies. As engineers, when we go into problem situations, it's important to understand the context so that you can help to solve the problem. Don't come from the outside thinking, I know how to solve your problem. You need to understand the community, the people you're talking to be able to actually address their problem. And that will start with fortifying their staple foods in our own situation. And microencapsulation technology helps to address the technical challenges, some of the technical challenges, which are key, because if you do have a solution and people are not ready to pick it up, or they get to the market and refuse to buy what is there, then your efforts have been, you know, sort of defeated. So I just wanted to show you my lab, a cross section of my lab. And here's my supervisor, Professor Levente Daishadi. And this is some of the people that I work with on this very interesting research that we've embarked on. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll be happy to take any of your questions.
Right, perfect. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Okay, so anyone with questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat. So just for a bit of clarification, and I think we discussed this a bit in our previous meeting, just to make sure this has nothing to do with GMOs. This is you adding, perfect, okay.
Yeah, so if you want me to expatiate a bit on that, because we do get that question often. No, we're not talking about genetically modified foods. This is just chemicals We're just putting the chemicals that might have been in the food before back into the food, and they're safe. They're naturally occurring most of the time. They're not things that have been tampered with. DNAs have not been tampered with. We're not using any organisms, to do this research. So no, this is not genetically modified.
Okay, perfect.
It's
See,
important.
it is
Yeah.
important. Uh, so like you mentioned, like you get a lot of these questions around GMOs and all that, and if you would like to go into that, you're free to go into how you feel about them, because we have a few people asking about what was the potential effect on their body and all that. So if you would like to go into that, we can go into that. But I have another question here
Mhm.
that it's about, can the food that you engineer make you feel more full?
Can you? Okay. So for my own research, like I said, that was the misconception. Hidden hunger is not I'm hungry. It's not when you hear like a growling sound in your tummy. No, this is something to do with lacking vitamins and minerals. So it's more often than not quickly identified or diagnosed because it's not your obvious problem or your obvious challenge. So no, we're not trying to make you more full. We're just trying to make you more healthy and more, to eat more nutritious food. Yeah.
Okay. And just a question, like how would someone go about finding out, okay, if they're lacking in what sort of micronutrient?
hmm So the general tendency is not to go in and say, "Hey, doctor, check me. Do I have enough iron? Do I have?" Usually, you will start seeing things. You start having challenges. Like I can speak more on iron because I work so very much with iron deficiency. With iron, you start feeling tired easily, a lot of headaches, you're stressed, and you're not able to do what your mates will normally do or what you yourself could normally do before because you just don't have the energy. And that affects even your studies. Like you find that your concentration levels in class is dropping and things like that. So that's the way that most people, it's when you just start feeling unwell, your body, when your body just starts not being what it's supposed to be. Yeah. So that's how, for mothers, like nursing mothers or babies, it's identified when they go into the hospitals, maybe to have babies, or when the baby's born, the baby's a low birth weight child, then, we start questioning why, or the mother is just unwell throughout her pregnancy, things like that.
Okay. So another question here is wondering what composes the molecules that creates the microencapsulation?
Yes. So the outer molecules, like I said, what is inside are the bioactives, which is what we want to deliver. So that those are the micronutrients. It depends. We can use starch as the what is encapsulating the bioactives. We can use polymers. We usually go with natural occurring polymers, like your chitosan, things like that, to encapsulate. And we want them to also be biocompatible, whatever because you're ingesting them, right? So there are things that your body will normally, we have some coatings in our lab we do with semolina, things like that, that is just normally things that your body will take, ingest, and not have a problem with.
Okay. So another question here is about how can we help those people who do not have access to nutritious foods? And I'm guessing that's the whole basis of your work.
Yeah, and you know what? It's important to know that this research that we do cannot stand in isolation. We need the help of we work with public health people, we work with nutritionists, we work with people in the health sector, like, because it's a joint collaboration. So we are in the lab, we are, you know, trying to get this right in terms of when it gets out. Some people would then do the efficacy study to actually see if it's doing what we want it to do. But we, as our end, is to engineer the food to make sure that face value, it is what it is supposed to be. And then of course we do a bit of bioavailability studies in our lab as we're doing what we're doing, but otherwise it's a joint effort. Governments have to be involved. This it's a big impact project, and if there is no buy-in from the government that you're to take up this technology, it's difficult. So it's yeah, multidisciplinary, like I said, and even in the implementation at the end of the day. And so that's how you help,
Mm.
hopefully.
So you mentioned this salt, how salt was very successful in this case.
Hmm.
Was it that the they followed most of the steps that you mentioned and salt was successful, or is it that salt is so readily used that since they put the what is it, the iodine in the salt, it was
Hmm.
just that was available? Is that
Hmm.
what happened?
So what happened is there's a challenge, which is how engineers view things. There's a problem. Now, when there's a problem, we need to find a solution. How can we address this large scale? What is common to everybody on earth? We know people take salt for, for meals. There's hardly a day that people go without taking salt, for instance. I know right now there's a lot of pushback in reducing your salt intake, but still you are taking salt, even if it's a pinch of salt. So with that in mind, the idea is to design the the food vehicle, in this case salt, in a way that it has enough. And there's also what is called RDIs, which is the recommended dietary intake. And I should add that, our focus while doing this is not to put in 100% of what is your RDI. Say, for instance, for iron, it's 17 milligrams. We're not going to go in and put 70 milligrams in a daily dose. We're going to put in about 30 to 50% because we know you can get it from other sources, because we also don't want you to have too much of it. Like iron itself is, it's the regulation of iron. You also don't want to have too much iron in your system. So those are things that we have to factor in. And that's why I say it's a joint effort. The policy of some countries is 30%, for some countries is 50%. So yes, back to your question, you identify what food vehicle. It's a very important aspect of the initiative. You need to find the right vehicle to use, because especially because we look at large populations and we look at what can reach a large population. So, and they found that it worked, right? So they put iodine in there and it worked. They were able to get the level of goiter down. And so based on that, researchers built on that. And with my lab, we've actually gone up to about quadruple fortification, where we have iron, we have zinc, we have B12, and I believe we have folic acid in salt. So those are 4 components that you have to put in this microparticle that has to be looking just like a grain of salt. So it's the intricacy of that. It takes a lot, because then we take it layer by layer and look at what we're going now, what can go with what can go after what. Try a lot of different designs and a lot of different formulations and permutations, but we eventually get to the desired premix that we need.
And I have a question that actually kind of ties in with that a bit. So
Mm-hmm.
the question is it possible to create a perfect, in quotations, food that has all the nutrients?
Oh goodness, don't we all wish that? And
Oh.
wouldn't that be great if it was ice cream, like ice cream with all the nutrients we want, or maybe your favorite, like pancake? Um, I don't think so. And that's why nutritionists will always tell you to make sure your plate is a balanced plate. Beyond micronutrients, we still have the macronutrients, right? So, it's almost impossible to have proteins, carbohydrates, you have iron, zinc, everything in one. No, it's not possible. But that would be so great to have, like, the super meal. And it should be ice cream. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we never know.
You never know. Okay. So
Maybe one of these
next,
young people will come up with yeah, that'll be nice to see.
that's true. Okay, so the next question is, because the food fortification works by adding its original nutrients or vitamins back into the food, how does
Mhm.
the food originally lose those nutrients and vitamins?
Oh, that's such a good question. And it's important to know that, you know, many of this, because of the change in the way the world is working now, back in the day, people will plant and you go harvest right there and it ends up on your plate. But now, we're getting from the countryside. and the people that are growing, the farmers are in the countryside, and then we go and during transportation, there's a lot of damage. Like vitamins, for instance, let me speak to that, are so they're so easily degraded, they're unstable. So, light, temperature changes, and then you don't have the vitamins in there anymore. Even when you're cooking, even the way we cook affects what we get out of our food, And then in the case of minerals, like something like iron has a lot of inhibitors. I don't know if you've heard of how don't take tea with iron tablets, because tea has polyphenols, and those will impede your supply of iron in the body, your absorption of iron in the body. In the same vein, we know that iron from animal sources, from your meat, is more bioavailable to you than iron from plant sources. It's hem and non-hem iron, and the relative absorbability is about 12%. So if you compare 12 times the way you absorb iron from meat is how you absorb from plants. So these are factors. There's so many. It's complicated, and it makes it easier sometimes to have this fortified food, because they've been engineered and designed in such a way that it will be bioavailable, and it'll get to you. And then the other thing I should mention, especially for these rural areas and low to middle income communities, they have a lot of depletion in their soils. So even the plants are already undernourished, because they don't have enough. Overcropping, farming a land, and it's not their fault. That's their source of livelihood. So they tend to just keep going. So they're lacking micro. You see something that's supposed to be like carrots, that's supposed to be this size, will come out this size at the end of the day. So already what you're taking is already depleted in those areas. So the ways are depleted soil, mode of transportation, processing, and even the way we cook the food. So these are things that affect how.
So technically, what you're saying is it's such a broad scale problem that just on one end you could do what you do when you add the fortification, but also, and where you mentioning you have to get community buy-in, you have to get government buy-in on their side as well. Then they could also be working towards get making sure people like give the soil a break and put proper nutrients back in the soil, that type of thing.
Yeah, and that's why everybody has to work hand in hand for this kind of solutions and to be implemented properly.
So any more questions, please add them. I actually have something to follow up on a bit. You mentioned about the way you take food. Is that something that should be, because I wasn't aware of that iron tablet and drinking tea. So is that something that you think that all of us should be made more aware of through primary school even?
Absolutely. And that's why opportunities like this, I actually like to dwell more on the problem, because until there's a problem, you cannot willingly go towards the solution. The way you eat, when what you eat with what matters, and that can only happen with education, which was also something I said to you about how education is important to eradicate micronutrient deficiencies. Because if you're not enlightened, if you don't know about this, then how do you help the situation? I talk to my kids, for instance, when it's time to eat, and I don't want vegetables. I'm like, listen, you have micronutrients in there. You need to get your micronutrients. You need to get your supply of micronutrients. And more so now with COVID-19, I will encourage all of you, to make sure that you're eating well, you're eating nutritious things. It's not just to be full. It's not the physical hunger, the hunger you actually feel. It's the hidden one that you have to pay attention to, and that will help make you healthier. And honestly, it will affect your productivity all round.
So I'm going to ask you one question that we always ask all the scientists that we speak to. How exactly has COVID-19 affected your research?
Oh my goodness. That question is the answer to that question is very scary because it's glaring and there's nothing you can do about it. So for me, beyond the challenge of being isolated, not being able to get to my lab, not being able to carry on with my research activities, it's also I have kids, right? And I've had to balance, and unfortunately I'm here alone with, I'm like I said, I'm a Nigerian, so I'm here alone on this study sojourn with my two kids. So I've had also to try to keep us all safe whilst making sure that they're okay. So my research has suffered, I will tell you that much. I actually welcome this opportunity and I'm grateful for it because sometimes when you have something to do, it gets you going. You're like something to look forward to. You're used to setting targets, setting goals. The uncertainty has just crippled everybody, right?
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. I like how you mentioned setting those targets and goals. So
Hmm.
that's for everyone to just know, like, you wake up every day, just even if it's one little thing, you put that down. I'm going to get this one thing done.
Absolutely. And you pat yourself on the back. Remember to say, I did this, so that tomorrow you can, you have an incentive again to keep going.
Okay, so don't have any new questions coming in. So what I'll do, I'll ask you, all right, is there anything that you would like everyone here to take away with them? If it's even one thing, just what sort of takeaways would you like everyone to have?
Okay, so I could tell you to become food engineers. Yeah. So on another note, yeah, I love engineering, and I've seen it as a tool to at least strive towards my what I would like to see, the change I would like to see in my world, and that's what I want you all to. It might not be engineering for you. It'll be nice if it is, but it might not be. Whatever it is that you think um, will make a difference in the world. This is what I teach my children in thinking of what you want to be. I mean, one of them said to me she wanted to be a YouTuber. I took a deep breath. And then I was like, okay, darling, this is my 7-year old. You want to be a YouTuber? Okay. How is that going to impact your world? And I find she's actually really trying to answer that question. She's like, Mom, what if I tell them about things going on? What if I tell them? I mean, then that's fine. But just, you know, work towards having an impact. And that's what I've, sort of like lead my life by, like making a difference. And it makes it easy, going forward when you have a big, um, how do I put it, something bigger than yourself that you're actually aiming to achieve beyond yourself.
Beyond
Yeah.
yourself. And one more thing, you're an engineer, so
Mhm.
would you like to tell everyone how important math is?
Oh, people. I know how everybody just and something and to be fair, for me, math came very easily, and it still is more interesting. But some of us don't have that natural flair, and it's good for us as like adults, educationists, mentors to realize that. But then we'll still encourage you because you do need your math even for day-to-day living. Even I mean, when you go to the grocery store and somebody's telling you how much you have to pay, you can do your estimation quickly that no, that's not how much. And people do make mistakes. So yeah, math is very important for engineering and for just for living generally. Just for living. I mean, even putting together furniture sometimes, maybe you have to you have to be able to do the math. And yeah, so love your maths, people. It's helpful.
Perfect. And with that, thank you so much, Folake, for joining us today.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you very
hold
much.
on. There's okay. That's another question.
Yeah,
Okay, so thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you so much for
I,
sharing this
yeah,
knowledge.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And with that, thank you everyone for listening. We will be following up. Currently, we have no more scientist charts planned for this summer, but we will be following up if we decide to do this again. Just want to thank everyone for being here. Thank all the scientists that have come to chat. Thank you, Folake, for. Oh, actually, I just found out. Breaking news, everyone. We're actually launching a TikTok. We're launching a TikTok Sci Exchange at RU. Sorry, at Sci Exchange RU. So it's SCIXCHANGE, capital R, capital U. So yeah, please follow us there. I personally know nothing about TikTok, but please follow us there.
I haven't done that too, but maybe we'll just follow
Yeah,
and do this now. Yeah.
for sure. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Have a
Thank
good
you
day.
for having me again, and bye, guys.